Neil from Essex here, out today with my son Jack. We're doing some backyard work today, and actually chipping firewood, as little sense as that might make. Jack, show him the piece of firewood we got there. We got a stack of firewood out here that's probably 4 or 5 years old, and it's starting to get a little gross now. And really, the best thing I think we can find to do with this firewood is to chip it today. So we're gonna run this thing through our Land Pride chipper shredder here. We're gonna talk about this attachment. We'll spend some time talking about the tractor that's powering it and why these two are a good match for each other. And ultimately, we're gonna blow our chips into Jack's little trailer here, which is gonna make a nice little carpet around the treehouse that we're working on building. So come along with us here today. Join us a little bit as we chip some firewood.
Essex, a helping hand with your land.
So there's a couple of specifications you're gonna see a lot when you're looking at wood chippers. One of those is the size of the throat, right? The maximum size of the material that's gonna be able to go into that chipper. This is a 4-inch chipper, and you want to keep in mind, like when you're looking at a piece of wood, it's almost never straight, right? If you had something that was a perfect 4-inch round piece, yes, you're able to feed that entire thing in, but all the nooks and the bends and that kind of stuff that exists in a piece of wood often will cause it to hang up as it's trying to go in, particularly if you have Ys and that kind of stuff in there. So having a little bit larger throat that you might think is necessary is advantageous, right? Generally, I feed pretty small stuff into this. The other thing that you're gonna see is some models having powered feed rolls. Now, we rent a big 12-inch chipper with powered rolls that will pull things back into that chipper. Those assemblies, though, having to have that extra hydraulic pump and those rollers that pull the material into the chipper add a lot of cost. And so we would typically see ones like this that are simple gravity feed, right? When I drop this stick in, it's gonna work its way down this chute, and the knives do pull things in to a degree, but fundamentally you're kind of relying on more gravity than not in order to get that material in, as opposed to a powered feed roller. So what drives the cost of these things upward? Power feed and larger throat diameters. Angle this down so we can make an adjustment here on the end of our chute and actually point this down a little bit to deposit the chips here where we want. So Jack's trailer here is fairly close, so we're just going to angle this down a little bit so when we throw the wood into it, it's going to land here where we want. Tractors, we often talk about when does horsepower matter and when does it not. Like when you're running things hydraulically, that hydraulic pressure and flow is going to determine the performance of that implement, and that's more dependent on the hydraulic pump than it is on the motor. But for implements like this that are PTO driven, where we've got that shaft coming off the back of the tractor, splitting the flywheel that's in here, that horsepower helps. Now in the case of machines like this LX, this tractor is sold anywhere from 26 to 40 horsepower. And when I go and do things like throw big heavy pieces of firewood in like this, you absolutely can tell the difference. I've got a nice way to demo that for you. So you saw how easily I threw that chunk of firewood in and it shot right through the chute. Now, this is one of the very few tractors that has a feature called 540E. So when that PTO is running on this tractor, I actually have a gear selector that I can shift that PTO up. Now what that allows me to do is to have my engine run at lower RPMs, potentially saving some fuel and some noise and that kind of stuff, but the tractor is effectively outputting a little bit less horsepower, right? Because of the gearing that's in there and yada yada. And you're gonna see the difference here. When I take this, I don't have the same amount of horsepower available. It's making it, but with a little bit more drama. And I've done a bunch of this before here where I've actually had some cases where I've thrown some stuff in and right there it is, stalled the tractor, right? I don't have quite as much horsepower available in that 540E, and this would be kind of a simulation of maybe what the 26 horse version of this tractor is going to perform with. So when you go through and you kind of consider implements that are going to benefit from high engine horsepower, here you can kind of give you a little bit idea what that application might look like where it actually matters. You probably have a case here where that 26 horse tractor just might not be able to chip some things quickly, where the 40 horse can make easy work of it. So just to give you an idea, this is the chunk here that was able to stall the tractor in 540E, but in regular 540, rev back up again, we can take this same piece and right through it goes. So that's a little bit about the implement in terms of performance and the need for horsepower for this kind of thing. When we're looking at this attachment itself, there's a number of other things here you should consider as well. One of those things is, what do you do if you jam this thing up, right? If you shove a piece of wood in here and it gets caught in those knives and you need to clean it out, you got to do some digging. One of the ways you could do that is by removing a couple bolts down here at the bottom. That's going to allow this chute to be able to swing up and hinge out of the way. You could do the same thing here with the grinder here in the middle and that big chipper flywheel that's on the inside. Removing this one bolt over here allows this to fold open to be able to get to the inside of this if you have material that's stuck inside the flywheel. The knives that are on that flywheel are a service item. If you run this thing with enough hours that you start to dull those knives and you notice things not feeding like they used to, popping this open and replacing or rotating those knives is going to help the service and the functionality of the unit. In terms of adjustments, not much to do on here, right? You hook the thing up to the tractor, you put power to it and you go. But there is some options here I pointed out before, the chute up here on the end that allows you to aim where the chips go. And there's also a nice rotation function here as well. You just lift this lever that releases a pin and then you can rotate this around to aim where you're shooting. So pretty straightforward. I've explained before that when we sell implements at Messick's, oftentimes we're looking for things in kind of like a good, better, best type arrangement, right? There's a lot of manufacturers of implements, and when we're looking at kind of how we position those different brands, we tend to put Land Pride kind of in that best category. And that's for two different reasons. One, they've been around a long time. They make a quality, dependable implement. We like them for that. But also, your larger implement companies tend to do a much better job of using better quality components and also providing long-term parts support. When we look around here and we see things like really large bearing blocks with names from manufacturers on them that we recognize, and we have an implement like that that definitely has wear parts on it, right? The knives that are on here, the bearings that are on here, 20 years down the road, you're probably going to need one of them. And we've come to expect from companies like Land Pride that we can find that kind of long-term parts support from companies that are kind of in this best implement category, right? Doesn't mean that you should always be buying there. Maybe you only have periodic use for things, and buying inexpensive imported implements like we also sell is more worthwhile. But I tend to like the buy once, cry once type philosophy where we don't view our tractors and attachments and equipment as disposable. So that's a little bit on the Land Pride chipper shredder. Been a nice attachment here to have around the backyard, right? When it comes to handling that kind of stuff that isn't worth taking out and burning. And we've also liked having the chips, right? And being able to actually take some of this material and find a good use for it. So if you're shopping for an attachment like this, or
a new machine or a piece of equipment that needs fixed or something, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 1-800-222-3373 or online at messicks.com.
New piece that needs fixed or something.
I don't know. It's like parts and service, make sure that you already got.